All right, let's do this. Last time, you guys had a very deep and thorough discussion consisting of your newfound laid plans working with the Blue Man group to get into the hold of the Deep King and somehow either find the entrance or access the secret treasure trove of the Deep King himself. It was then somewhat settled upon that the best course of action was that Indigo was to go in alone to relay the agreed upon set of information to the Deep King, perhaps make contact with Lara, find this secret entrance, while Scylla, Sue, and Sephel and Stool stay back. Mostly for their own safety, especially Sephel's, concerning their visage and what the manner in which they are met could be. And we ended with Indigo marching up to the hold, being searched, and then led through underneath the portcullis and the twin doors that led into the hold. And here you find yourself, Indigo, looking out into this vast chamber. You see numerous stony columns reaching floor to ceiling. They must be 100 feet high. Just a cavernous space. You see the only illumination throughout this entire area are small streams of flowing lava beside many of these columns, reaching into small circular moats that reach around the base of each of these columns, sometimes interconnecting, making pathways. You see some servants moving about in the far corners of this vast space, but eventually the echoes stop, and the two guards about you start walking forward. And you see one kind of glances backwards and kind of nods their head, encouraging you to follow them. And as you are keeping a pace with them, you are led through this kind of labyrinth, lava-coated floor until you reach the far back, and you see that there's this kind of intricate-looking elevator of sorts, and you are led into it, and one of them ratchets this lever down, up, and then back up, and eventually you feel yourself start to rise. And instead of like a shakiness or anything, it's almost like there's no movement except for the sense of weightlessness that you feel within your gut. And so, just out of curiosity, what's going through Indigo's mind as you begin your ascent?
I think the suitably intimidating facade and interior of this building has Indigo maybe doing a little bit of second guessing on was this a good idea or not, but more than anything else, he feels like he needs to see Lara. He needs to know. And that is what is consuming him. He, at times, almost forgets he has the amulet around his neck because he is so focused on seeing his friend again.
And what does Indigo want to do? Should he meet Lara? What's like the thing that he's looking forward to the most, or most dying to like have happen should this meeting occur?
Oh, in an idealized state, he feels like she'll run into his arms and like they'll embrace and then skip their way right out. And I think he knows that's not feasible, or even if things are different, realistic. But he can't go on knowing that she's around and not knowing if she's her.
Well, you continue to rise until that sense of weightlessness stops, and the door starts to open. These two metal sheets just kind of slide back away, much to our kind of modern elevators now. And what you're greeted by, I can only imagine taking your breath away because of the pure horrific sight you see before you. The first thing we notice is that this red stream starts to flow within the elevator floor. And we instantly know what it is. It's blood. And as your gaze picks up from the floor and looks in, you see a very similar looking chamber as to the one you had seen down before. However, this hall probably stretches 200 feet. You see basalt columns with various dwarven faces upon each one, these faces facing inwards towards the aisle that lead forth to this plain, however imposing and militaresque looking throne. You see free-flowing columns of lava coming in through the ceiling, and you see it opens up to this grand vaulted ceiling, and you see the cavern and the smoke far above you, and you realize that it almost acts like a cloud system this high up. However high you may be, you really don't know. But as your head comes up and you look into this room, you see what was once a great kind of carpet that stretched forth is now covered, littered with various dwarven, human, elven forms, prone, dispatched in various different ways, their blood congealing and flowing forth towards the elevator. And as the guards step forward, they are kind of just marching through, and as they come out, they turn back towards you, and you see at the far back of this room, at the throne, you see what looks like a very fine and elegantly dressed, curvy form of a female gray dwarf with this, like, very, very luminescent white braided hair that has been wrapped up about their head, kind of sitting upon the arm of the throne, while you see the now familiar form of the Deep King with this very pointed crown, this robe about him. However, you now see that the robe is gone, but his fur, this dark mantle of fur, is still about his back, and he carries this weighty mace that you believe you had seen before, that they were using as a walking stick, as he beats to a pulp a gray dwarf at his feet. And he is standing before the throne now, kind of down a couple steps, and you just hear this maniacal laughter, and then it cuts off, and you see their arms outstretched in that mace in one hand, and they go, welcome, new friend, to my hold. Please come forth. I hear you have more information concerning my egg. Don't be shy. I won't bite. And the guards await you to step forward out of the elevator. What do you do?
Slowly, with a bit of hesitance, Indigo will step onto the blood-soaked carpet in front of him, walk about 5 paces up, and then slowly bend the knee to the Deep King.
You hear the Deep King laugh as they are very far away from you still. You're probably almost 195 feet away, and their bellow echoes out. Bring him forth, lads. I want a good look at this one. And so the guards very quickly, grab your arms and start, dragging you forward, moving quicker than you almost have time to pick up your feet, until you now sit as they, dump you on the ground back on your knees. You see that there are far more bodies about you now. As the king sits down on his throne, you see his knuckles in that mace are just covered in viscera, and this female dwarf kind of sidles up to him and starts like rubbing on his shoulder and his arm, and he goes, "So what may your name be?"
I picture Indigo now. He's like one hand's against the floor, like one knee. He's gonna bring his hands together.
Proal, please, watch over me at this time and give me the eloquence of speech.
And I am, when I'm still crumpled up, I'm gonna cast Enhance Ability on myself. Eagle Splendor.
Okay, does that have any verbal components?
Yep, verbal, somatic, and material. Hands together over holy symbol, which glows slightly as he says that prayer.
Okay. The two guards immediately have like their lances pointed at you, and the Deepkin's just like, no, easy, lads. Don't worry. He's just praying to his god. I'm not worried about it. Please speak.
Indigo is going to stand up, knees stained red, one of his palms red, stretch out his arms.
Great Deep King, I am Indigo Honeydew, priest of the Wandering Abbey of Proal, believer of sky, sea, stone, and earth, and I am at your disposal, sir.
The Wandering Abbey, you say? Fascinating. I do believe I know someone from your order. Oh, what's their name? And you can see they're putting on a show. Like, they clearly know who they're talking about. But they look over to this female gray dwarf and he goes, "Oh, Shal. Do you happen to remember? You know what? I've got it. I believe her name to be Sister Rial. Does that ring a bell to you?"
Absolutely, sir. I'm pleased you know of Sister Rial. She taught me history and set me on my path of book learning and the ways of ancient tomes and knowledge.
Wonderful. You see, she used to come by here and tell me a great many tales and stories about vast wonders and treasures, both here in the Underdark and on the surface world. And you know what? She's here right now. I suppose we could get a little meeting together, but that really depends on all the other information you might have for me. For I was told, if I'm not mistaken, you had some rather interesting information about my egg.
Yes, sir. When I first came to this fair city, I had, after a few odds and ends, I met with a member of the Keeper of the Flame, who tasked me and some compatriots who, unfortunately, mostly fell in battle, to seek after the egg before it had been stolen by members of a group called the Grey Ghosts. So we journeyed after them. We found their hiding place in the West Clef, and we sought to wrest the egg from them.
But you did not manage to get the egg from them.
Well, it's a funny story, really. We briefly had the egg, but now they have in fact gotten it back from us. But I have an idea where they might be keeping it, and I know a little bit about their organization that I think would be very helpful to one such as yourself with a strong force of arms.
That does sound interesting. And they kind of prop themselves, like hoisting themselves up out of their throne, and they pick up their cane-like mace, and they just start kind of like twirling it around as they start walking down the steps slowly and just start picking their way amongst the bodies, kind of making this predatory like circle about you. And they go, "Who was it that was your contact amongst the Keepers of the Flame? I'm just curious."
Well, of course. I kind of thought he was like the head priest, but I think he went by the name of Gartakar.
Ah, yes, Gartokar. Yes, no, that brings a fair few memories back. I don't think he was of a high-ranking priestly position for very long. But the next question I have for you, Mr. Indigo, is how did it come to Thumber Shoud's attention that there was even an egg? Do you know this?
Well, I reported to Gartakar, and shortly after that interaction, the red worm began his rampage. So I imagine he let it slip, I guess.
Roll a deception check.
All right. Thank you, Eagle Splendor.
I'm gonna bring up
For the kids at home, this is a flat roll.
Passive insight here. Ooh.
Okay, well, that's a 14. That's not as high as we would have liked, but here we are.
Okay. He kind of starts rubbing his chin and he goes, I never really was too much of a fan of the Keepers of the Flame. I thought it odd that we had to keep up this religious-like cult for a dragon when we could just break it and bend it to our will. Seemed far easier, but there are just some who can't let that religious fervor go. And he kind of like looks semi-pointedly at you, sees your holy symbol and the way you had prayed before, and he goes, but it's better to keep the people fighting amongst themselves now, is it not? Keeps them distracted from what you as a ruler might be doing. And he throws his like big meaty hand on your shoulder and just kind of like gives you a big squeeze and then lets go. And he points his bloody mace to one of the guards standing beside you, and he goes, go bring me another one. And the guard quickly marches off. And he turns back to you and he goes, so where were the grey ghosts hiding this egg when you first found them? And how was it you found them before I had even heard of any of this?
Well, I mean, I think the simple answer is that the Keepers of the Flame were not thrilled with the fact that they had been stolen from and sought to hide their failure. So they came to unfettered parties, such as myself. We were given a tip-off that there was a certain member of the Grey Ghost that was pretty distinctive, and we were able to follow them with a little bit of magical aid to a place called the Whirlstone Tunnels. It's about in the west cleft among the Darrow village.
Curious. I feel I've heard tell of this. And not but a moment later, you see that guard reappear with a Darrow in chains, both in hands and feet, and rags being like pushed forward, and it kind of just like harumps to the ground. And the Deep King takes its mace and like picks it underneath the chin of this Darrow, kind of like raising their face to look at them, and goes, "Would you, little captive, happen to know of something called the Whirlstone Tunnels? Am I correct in guessing you know of the West Cleft District?" And there's a pause, and like the wild, creepy eyes of the Darrow kind of like gets this sinister smile. It's like, I know the West Cleft. I know it. I know it. I live there. I know it. I'm from it. You don't know it though? You don't know it, big mighty Deep King. You don't know it. Whirlstone Tunnels, and one eye is kind of like going in circles while one eye is like just kind of looking off to the side, peering at Indigo, and it's like, maybe I might have heard of the Whirlstone Tunnels. And the Deep King goes, "Oh, good. Listen now, and I need you to pay real good attention." And he like slips his hand underneath the Darrow's throat and like just starts picking him up into the air, and then like brings his face down close, and he goes, "Now I need you to confirm something for this lad over here." And he points his mace over at Indigo. "Was there anybody in this place called the Whirlstone Tunnel? Have you ever heard of something known as the Grey Ghosts?" And the Darrow's like,
Whirlstone Tunnel. Lots go in. lots go in. Grey ghosts. Yes. Heard of them.
and the Deep King drops him. Goes, good. I'm glad we're making progress. And he turns back to you, Indigo, and goes, "So how did you go about in there? How did you and whom did you apprehend the egg from?"
Well, we went in there, first attempt, not so great. Second attempt, much more successful. We made our way deep into the cave. I could show you if you want, I suppose, or I could give you directions. We went there, and in the deep part of the cavern there was an obelisk, an altar that the Grey Ghosts were attempting some sort of foul magic with. Dangerous stuff, but it turns out there's actually rather a lot of dangerous stuff going on down here in the below, the underdark. In I suppose your kingdom, there are foul things abroad in the deep lake.
I've heard tell of some things happening within the deep lake. I am curious now about this obelisk. And you see he gets kind of like this far away look in their eyes. And he points at the other guard and goes, "See if our learned friend can be of some service and could join us here within the throne room." And the other guard runs off while the one who had brought in the Darrow stands close by. The Darrow is still kind of breathless, but like these kind of small giggles erupt from them every now and again. And he points back at the Darrow and he goes, "Do you know anything about this obelisk?" And the Darrow starts like feverishly shaking their head no. And he goes, "Well, I suppose you've earned your freedom." And the Darrow breaks out in this huge smile. I was like, "Thank you. I'm so glad I could be of service to you, Deep King." And the Deep King's like, "Absolutely, my little friend." And he like steps up, and it looks like he goes in for the manacles, but you see Indigo behind his back. He starts raising up the mace, and then he very swiftly pivots his body and brings it and smashes it down upon the Darrow's head and then just starts beating them into a pulp. And then the Deep King, like, leans back, head up towards the ceiling, just... Oh, it's very cathartic. I've recently come to realize there's something beautiful about death. Do you not agree, my young friend?
It is an essential part of life. It goes around and around and around and around.
Too right, yes, no, it very much is. I find myself very intrigued with the idea of being the messenger to their gods, the one who sends them on their merry way. Something just feels right about it. And then you start to hear the clinking of chains again, Indigo. And from your right, out of the shadows, appears this very thin, emaciated form of a human woman. And you recognize it as Sister Rial, and I think you flash back to when you were younger, and you, like, kind of like a soundless memory, are just seeing them for what they once were. Can you describe in detail what Sister Rial looked like?
Yeah. Well, last time I saw Sister Rial, she was in her mid-30s. She stood tall, straight back, fairly thin woman, long black hair, and kind of bright emerald eyes. Very keen, slow to smile, but with a really booming laugh once she got going, and an absolutely insatiable appetite for knowledge and secrets.
Mm. And how many years have passed since you last saw them?
I would say it's probably been about 5 years since she went on her last kind of pilgrimage, and then I left on my own. I assumed that she had joined back up in my absence, but apparently I am mistaken.
Yeah, you see them come forward. Their hair is very short and, like, haphazardly, seemingly to be cut and ragged. You see that there's knotting all over it. Her eyes appear dull, but they squint at you as they get closer, and they seem to grow kind of vibrant for a moment, and this, like, crooked smile appears, and you see that a couple teeth are missing, but you don't believe it's from necessarily malnutrition or poor care. It looks like they might have been busted from her, as you see bruises and scars all about their body that were not there before when you last saw them. And they kind of start to rush forward until the Deep King swings out the mace and just, like, prevents her from getting too close and goes, Now, just hold on a minute there, sister. I understand this is a young friend of yours, but he and I are in a deep conversation. And he brought up something I'm quite curious about, and seeing as you have access to all that I hold dear, and have been such a great friend to me in my collection, could you perhaps tell us of some kind of obelisk? Could you describe it for her, young man?
Sister Al, it's so great to see you again. The obelisk, it was large, dark, and sundered. To my knowledge, there was one of the Darrow leaders. Her name was Plinky, and she was leading a group that was enamored with the idea of repairing it with this strange, unusual substance, a metal, I believe it was, and kind of repairing it and creating a really powerful, magical focus out of it.
Mm. What is your passive insight, by the way?
My passive insight is 17.
Okay. You see, as you describe this and you mention the name Plinky, that a spark of recognition and slight fear crosses their face, but then like immediately becomes composed, and seemingly like attentive, like what, really trying to decipher what this is. But you know that she knows of this Plinky that you're talking about and of this obelisk, and she just kind of like purses her lips and she goes, I'm not very sure, my lord. And she takes like this hard swallow, and you kind of hear like this faint whistle when she talks, and you presume it's from some of the missing teeth, like just this kind of light whistle that happens as she speaks. But it's very rough, it's very dry, her voice now. And I imagine that kind of like hits you in the gut, because this was such a vibrant individual before this moment. And the Deep King kind of squints his eyes at her and goes, very well then. Perhaps we'll think about it further, or we'll send you back to the books to perhaps pursue the meaning of this obelisk. Or perhaps when I've sent a battalion down into the Whirlstone tunnels and cleaned it of this grey ghost filth, retrieved my egg, we'll send you in there to discover its secrets for me. Yes, I think that's what we'll do. That is all, sister. Perhaps when I'm done with young Indigo here, I'll allow you two to visit with each other again, perhaps over a nice dinner, a little feast, seeing as Indigo has brought me quite interesting information. But, young lad, you lost it. The Grey Ghost have it back in their possession?
I believe so. It was all we could do to escape, and there was a strange bit of magic from the obelisk that kind of shunted us from our place, and we ended up back here in the city.
Curious. And who is this us that you speak of, as it's only you I see here before me?
Yeah, I unfortunately lost track of my companions. As I mentioned, our trip was quite costly the first time in. My companion, her name was Lara. She fell in battle with a strange group of skeletons and the like.
Lara? Tall woman, is it?
Yep. Tall woman with a countenance like granite, and a mind like a honed dagger.
Oh, curious. This story you're telling me is very old. See, I happen to have now in my service a Lara that has quickly risen amongst my ranks into the position of a general, which I've not had before. But she's not made mention of you. Guard, bring me Lara. I don't care what her duties are at the moment. She will be here.
And the guard moves off and he goes back.
So, you're running with the likes of Lara, if this be the same Lara that I think I have now in my service. She came with another friend of hers, a tall fella, dark skin. I don't remember his name at the moment, but he very highly recommended her into my service. But you got separated by skeletons, you say?
Yep. Skeleton. They were just too many for us, and there was a certain former companion of ours as well there, a Bupido, a deranged Darrow who sought to lay us low and nearly did it.
I know of this Bupido that you speak of. He took a rather close friend of mine, a former mistress. When I heard his name in whispers about Gracklestug, I was hunting for him. And you came about him. Did you finish him off?
Indigo has a slight smile.
Yeah, we did.
And he like runs up and takes his hands and he like claps you on both shoulders and like picks you up and like squeezes you in this good hug, and he's like, and then he pushes you back and goes, "Oh, good lad, yes. This was news I needed along with the egg. You've made me very happy indeed, Indigo. Yes, you will be right deserving of a reward. But here she is. Lara!" And we hear the clank of metal and the hard tap of shoes as you see your friend in all her glory in this black gold-trimmed armor with these depictions of various scenes of debauchery covering it. She has this long, I would almost describe it as Romanesque armor, not army, thank you. And she's got like this long cloak, kind of black purplish cloak trailing behind her as she comes to a stop probably 15-20 feet away from you and the Deep King, and she gives this like small, very curt bow, and the Deep King turns to her and goes,
Lara, I think this is a friend of yours by what he claims. Said he'd been moving about with you and lost you in the Whirlstone tunnels. Do you know anything of this? See, I rather keenly remember you not mentioning anybody by the likes of this good lad Indigo.
and we see Lara's eyes turn towards you on Indigo. And I'm gonna have you make a active insight check, not passive here.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's a nice smile. That is a 26.
26. You see her composure flicker, similar to Sister Rial. As in, there's like, you see the corner of her mouth start to twitch up into a smile, and you see like their bodies start to lean forward, but then it's like a cloud comes over their eyes and they kind of rock back just ever so slightly, and their lips go back down into this kind of like tight-lipped frown, and they stare at you for a long moment and then look back at the Deep King and go, "I'm afraid I do not know this individual." And the Deep King kind of like looks back at you in the go and goes,
"Oh, that's very strange. Oh, what exactly happened in there in the Whirlstone tunnels that separated the two of you? You said skeletons and this serial killer Bupido, which I'm still very glad about. But how did you get separated? Exactly."
Well, Lara was struck down. Besides Arthur and Stool, and I was just barely dragged away before they fell upon me.
and he turns back to look at Lara and he goes,
Lara, you should have told me you had friends back there. The way you told the story when you came in here, you had been travelling about throughout the Underdark in search of a great king to whom you could pledge your services to. But here we have this story that you've been laid low, albeit still in the service to ourselves through people of the Keepers of the Flame. I sense a greater air of mystery about you than you were letting on before. Well, lad.
Then he turns back to you and he goes,
I believe I have all I need to send some forces within to the tunnels to find my egg. But you deserve a reward, and how about a hearty meal while we're at it? We'll see if Sister Riol could take a break from her books and maybe pay you a little visit later on. Does that sound fair?
Indigo goes into kind of like a half bow.
Absolutely, Sir Deep King. You are most generous. I wish only to be of service.
Very good of you, lad. Very good. Lara, you can attend back to your duties, but I will expect you to not be skipping our great feast here for Mr. Indigo.
and then he turns back to the female dwogger who has just been lounging within his throne, and he goes,
Shawl, my dear lady, come with me. I wish to retire to my chambers. And he goes, guards, show Indigo to his room for this evening. Indigo, don't be a stranger. Anything you need, don't be afraid to ask the guards, and I'll see that you have it.
Thank you, my king.
he marches off with Shawl, and you see amongst all the blood in this room at least 12 other sets of footprints of invisible guards walk by you, trailing after the king. And then you see Lara very quickly turn about and march off from the room with not even a second glance in your direction. And the two guards grab you by your arms and start marching you down the hall. Do you say or do anything?
Yeah, I will, allow myself to be led away, but as Laura's back turns to me, I'm just going to say, Eldith, Sarith, Topsy, Turvy, Stool, Arthur, Ashni, Kayan.
You watch and you see them stop for a moment. The cape comes to a rest behind them. And as you are starting to be dragged down this dark corridor before you lose sight of them, they kind of like half turn. And then they turn back to where they had been facing and they walk on. And you are eventually led before a stone door to which is opened, and you are thrust into a room, and the one of the guards steps forward and says,
If you need anything, knock.
And then he steps out and shuts the door, and you turn around and you see a very utilitarian room. There's a bed, there is a small roundish window that peeks out into the smog that coats most of Gracklestugh, but you can hear the city far, far below you. You see that there is a dresser made of zergwood, and there is a like a dry sink with a like a metal silver bowl filled with water to refresh yourself and stuff. What do you do as you enter into the room, or you are left alone?
I feel like Indigo walks in and lets out a low, slow exhale, and is just hands shaking. He goes over and gets a towel and tries to wash the blood off of his hands. And then he just looks out that smog filled window and wonders what the hell he's gonna do next.
And you sit there and you're thinking about this, your hands are shaking, when you hear what sounds like two thuds outside, and the door opens slowly, and you see standing there in her rags is Sister Rial, and she quickly shuts the door and just starts running towards you and wraps you in this hug, and you can tell she's squeezing as hard as she can, but her strength is so weak. She's like, "It's so good to see you, Indigo," and tears are like coming down her eyes, and she goes, "I've missed you so much."
Oh my God, Sister Rial, what are you doing here? How did you get stuck here?
Shortly after I left the Wandering Abbey, I joined an expedition coming here to the Underdark. You know me and my stories. I couldn't help it, such tales of treasures and wonders left down here. I had to find out for myself. It was just all too tempting. And then, not too long after my arrival in the city, stories of my tales told within the local taverns reached the Deep King, and then I was brought forward to him. And at first, what began as a decent relationship of mutual curiosity and interest in... I'm sorry. I don't get very much water down here.
And she actually looks over to the dry sink where there's that basin full of water, and she like leaves you and just like picks it up and starts dumping it down her throat and like splashing it over herself in her rush to get it. And then she puts it down. She goes,
I so rarely get water. But Indigo, what are you doing here? Why have you come forward? How do you know of the obelisk and of Plinky?
I have been there. Just as I said before, the Deep King, we came there to seek of the egg and encountered it. It is quite a thing of magic. It is powerful and ancient and bizarre.
Yes, it is. No, I've heard in the local legends and some of the Deep King's tomes mention of it. But I was the one who contacted the Grey Ghosts. You see, something has gone horribly wrong within the Deep King's mind, and I believe his mistress, Shawl, has some kind of grip on him, and now this warrior woman, Lara, she has another kind of grasp here. I had hoped to direct the Grey Ghosts in activating the obelisk, perhaps using it to disrupt the Deep King, perhaps destroy this hold, and perhaps empower the Grey Ghosts to exact my escape. But now you're here, and they have fallen.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, there's still some of them, but Plinky is like super dead, yeah.
Oh, this is unfortunate. But perhaps the Deep King sending a battalion down there to secure the Wellstone tunnels might not be bad.
and then she kind of like folds her arms and she's kind of like tapping her chin. She's like,
Yes, perhaps if he were to send me down there, I might be able to do it myself. But that's not important now. What's most important is getting you free of this place. If he gleans any further interest in you, you might not be able to leave, such as myself. Indigo, we must get you from this place.
We need to get you out of here, Sister Rial. I can't leave you here. Look what they've done to you.
No, I will be fine. You are of a bright and smart mind. You must leave here, Indigo. Tell the Abbey of where I am if I should not escape. Together, perhaps they can retrieve me if I can't find my own way out. But you must go. What is reward? Perhaps I can convince him to let me take you to the treasure trove. There is something there that you must take, Indigo.
And she's getting like this bright look in her eyes glowing almost. She like steps up to you.
Do you remember a particular story we spoke of long ago when you were but a child, still so young and innocent? One of gemstone dragons?
And I imagine you do remember this. And you are launched back to this scene where we see you all sitting within like this glade, and we see Sister Rial just kind of like talking as a bunch of, multi lingual and racial beings. We see some Herringon, we see some Tortle, we see you, we see some humans, we see some young elf folk listening and rap. And she like holds up her fingers as we're in this memory, and she's like, how many types of dragons are there? What are the 3 main groups? Can anybody answer me?
Colorful.
Colorful. Thank you, Indigo. That's very apt. We have the chromatic. We have the metallic. And then we have the gem. Now, we've done our lessons on the chromatic and the metallic, but who can tell me any of the kinds of gemstone dragons? Does anybody have an answer? And we hear one yell out, Topaz! Topaz! And another one yell out, Crystal! Crystal! Does Indigo say anything?
Ruby.
Ruby, yes. No, we have the ruby. That's very good, Indigo. And then another kid, amethyst. And, the rest are kind of spouted off. And she goes, yes, no, those are all of those. Indigo, good job remembering the ruby. Now, we don't normally see the ruby, but we do know the great lord of the gem dragons is a ruby. But did you all know that there is another that is supposedly was struck down by Sardior, the lord of the gem dragons? Does anybody know of this story? And all the kids are looking back, shaking their head. No, like, absolutely not. Like, what are you talking about? You're the one that's taught us of these things. And she goes, yes, no, there was another. One said to be beautiful and terrifying in its own way, and one that rivaled the great Sardior in beauty, elegance, power, and that is the Obsidian Dragon.
Wow.
And you are brought back to the present as she looks at you and she goes, he has in his trove the egg of an Obsidian Dragon. We must get it. And that's where we'll end today.
Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you again. You're one of our favorite listeners. You made it to the post show notes. Thank you so much for your support. Yes, new outro means new news. We started a Discord server. Yes, we wanted to create a space for our listeners to meet fellow fans of the show. It's a new community, so hop on in, say hi, we'll be there. You can find it by going to our Twitter page, and it's linked up at the top there. Our Linktree/The Madness Table has all of our links to all of our stuff. Speaking of which, if you haven't, please follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We try to, post some memes and other exciting stuff, especially on Twitter, so we would love the support there. We're also going to be launching a bonus action segment soon where we talk about the behind the scenes for the different chapters of our story. So please keep an eye out for those. And if you want to submit any questions for a future bonus action segment, please email us at themadnesstable@gmail.com. Lastly, please leave a review if you haven't. All the reviews do is they help us grow. It's a quick, easy, and free way to show your support. And we always appreciate that. So again, thank you so much for listening. We hope you're happy and healthy. We'll see you next week. When